There's nothing like live hockey experience. Minnesota Wild action at Grand Casino Arena all season long. You can share seats now at wild.com/tickets to join the excitement. Wild.com/tickets.
Yeah, live hockey. Grand Casino Arena tomorrow night for the Minnesota Wild. And then several days with the high school squads. Looking forward to that. Joining me now, he's going to be at the X watching high school hockey later this week. I can feel it. It's Alec Lewis of The Athletic at Alec_Lewis via X. How you doing, man?
I'm great, Nordo. Yeah, I actually would be. I'm going home tomorrow to be in the warmth for a little bit and quasi-recover, quasi-work harder. But I really, the high school hockey would be fun right about now, I'll tell you that.
No doubt about it. Now, just as I brought you on and we're introducing you, I heard some sort of a notification in the background. Did the Vikings cut somebody else, Alec? Are we ready to break more?
Nothing.
Okay.
Nothing has broken since we've been on the phone in 2 minutes. But yeah, I expect this week and next week to be very challenging from a work-life balance perspective, but that is part of what you sign up for in doing this job. I did see this morning the Lions traded David Montgomery to the Texans, which was pretty interesting. But no, nothing on the Vikings front right now.
You're going to be down in your hometown sipping sweet tea and breaking news as things unfold over the next week or so. That's going to be terrific. Now, you got to the combine. I want to. We're gonna dig in a bit because this morning, and I love how this thing sets up. You're fresh back from Indy. You had this the articles What I Heard About Vikings QB Pursuit and JJ McCarthy at the NFL Combine. I do want to dig into that more specifically momentarily, but just at 10,000 foot level, like you spent some time there digging in. It's an exhausting week. How was the Combine for you, Alec?
Yeah. It was how it always is. Some really late nights that turn into really early mornings. And it's a blast. I mean, really, the opportunity to be in person with people, you just don't take it for granted because you don't get it a ton. Especially in this league where everything is kind of guarded and airtight. So, it was a blast. It was fun to see a lot of colleagues. It was cool to, catch up with people, meet some new people. Spend time with people at all levels of this organization and others and agents. So it was really good. I will say this. I mean, the Viking, I think, I don't mind saying this. We had an athletic staff meeting with our NFL staff on Monday, and our editor-in-chief came up to me. He said, I think the Vikings might be the most interesting team in the NFL right now, which A, for me, was cool to hear that, but B, it's like, all right, so that means the editor-in-chief is paying attention to what I'm doing, which adds a layer of pressure that you're really, it's not the most preferable, but it adds to the intrigue over the next 2 weeks.
A lot of reporting's been done on it at the national level, but you mentioned the Vikings may be one of the more interesting teams. That's clearly solely dedicated to whatever the hell they're going to do with the quarterback spot, right? And there's just the broad spectrum.
I think it's the combination of you've got this polarizing young quarterback who you drafted in the top 10 for the first time in your franchise history and who had the season he did. You have the names that we've all seen and heard floating in the ether that are possibilities to come in. You have the GM who was just fired. You have Justin Jefferson being one of the face of the leagues. You have a head coach who won Coach of the Year but hasn't won a playoff game. So it's just a lot of, it's a lot of interesting dynamics. And I will say, I mean, like, any conversation with agents or team people, it's what are you hearing? What are the Vikings going to? Yeah, the quarterback. Who's it going to be? They're really going to do that? Are they really? Like, I mean, that's what it was for 5 days. So yeah.
So kind of set this up is whether it was Pete Najarian, my previous guest, or just kind of how my mind has been following this and just trying to reconcile all of the various names in the ether, as you mentioned. You know, for me, the situation with the quarterback spot and this new regime and all of those things, I'm still not ready to quit JJ. The way that we've talked about this from minute one, Alec, it feels, I don't just mean you and I, but I'm just collectively, social media, national reporting, and all of these things. is that, JJ had his opportunity. That opportunity looks different and is different. I don't disagree with that. But now we are talking about XYZ free agent that's just going to come in and replace the guy in some respects. I've just seen too much about that, where as we look at part one of your piece via The Athletic, is there anything you're able to do to kind of smooth out that path or smooth out or add clarity to that conversation in terms of J.J. McCarthy's role in 2026?
Yeah, I mean, I've tried to write this in a way that makes sense and talk about it in a way that makes sense, and I'll do it here. I mean, this organization right now is really balancing two different worlds. You're in the long-term quarterback development world with a young player who has a lot to develop on the field, off the field, and obviously from a health perspective. And you're in the short-term world of you haven't won a playoff game since 2019. You have a superstar receiver who wants to win and produce. You have a veteran-laden roster that really kind of is built for the now. And so managing those two worlds at the same time, I mean, it's not the most optimal scenario. And I think I would also add this Vikings ownership group has never been willing to not compete in the present. And so until they become willing to essentially allow the bottom to fall out or to allow it to reach the ultimate mountaintop from a, we're going to shoot for the moon perspective, you really almost have to find the level of quarterback insurance that they're in the market for. So that's really the dynamic at play. I mean, it's very clear, it was very clear throughout the 2025 season that J.J. McCarthy does have high-end traits.
Yeah.
It was also very clear that it might take a longer runway to bring those out on a consistent basis. And again, while JJ might need that runway, teams aren't always willing to take that entire amount of runway. So it's part of the complex situation that makes it so interesting. And I would say, as an analyst, as someone on the outside, I totally understand any fan's perspective who's like, why would you hand it over to someone in the short term that maybe it would be really difficult to reach the Super Bowl with, instead of just allowing JJ to either sink or swim? And I understand that. But again, this organization has never been willing to ultimately sink. And so the decision-making will align with ownership's preference in that way.
You're 100% correct. And the, kind of trying to thread that needle. We talked about it when this first quote unquote regime came to Minneapolis, threading the needle of becoming younger, becoming more financially flexible while competing and contending. And you have a couple of good seasons in the mix. You don't have any playoff wins, but now we're looking at a spot where instead of being younger and more financially flexible, we're actually older and we have no money. So, sadly, that did not work out very well. Now, with that said, the pressure, is there pressure, or is there a variable here of head coach year 5 that plays into that runway for J.J. McCarthy?
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely do think, I don't know if I'd call it pressure, but it became clear over the course of the 2025 season, and it also was evident last week in Indianapolis, that it was a stressful time period, definitely for Kevin O'Connell, but also for a lot of people internally because of their inability to be as consistent as they wanted to be. So I would say that definitely guides the decision making. I've had people ask me in the last couple of days, does Kevin O'Connell have more power now? I wouldn't say push back, but I've made it very clear, like, he's had a lot of power now for multiple years. And he was the strongest voice from a personnel perspective on the quarterback last offseason. So that's not crazy different. What is different, obviously, is going another year without a playoff win and going another year where you did have the downsides that they had.
Yeah, and so until anything breaks, it still kind of feels like we're playing the names. And I loved your breakdown on several potential options here. Again, in your piece, you probably already subscribed to The Athletic, ladies and gentlemen, but follow Alec_Lewis via X. You got his podcast going on, but terrific piece, and it's only part one. You're kind of leaving us hanging. When's part two coming out, Alec?
Tomorrow. I was working on it right as you called. Okay. I mean, we got some Rob Brzezinski stuff in there. We got some Jalen Naylor, Eric Wilson. We're going to have some center conversations, some draft targets, run game. I mean, it's there's a lot to get at. There really is.
Over the last couple of weeks, I've gone from somewhat clueless to somewhat engaged and informed on this as the running back spot. You're aware of the news that sans a trade that Javon Hargrave will be released, and of course Aaron Jones the human, Aaron Jones the culture element in that locker room. Gonna miss that guy, but there's also a cap associated with it, and a guy sadly missed 5 games last year. Kind of a story of his career. And we love Aaron Jones, but he's turning 32, I think, at some point in 2026. So with that said, I went from daft to somewhat informed to now it's kind of on my radar, the idea of looking at a running back in the draft. You mentioned that run game. Is year 5 the year that the run game explodes for the Minnesota Vikings?
Well, I definitely think Frank Smith, who was brought in to be the assistant head coach from the Miami Dolphins, where he was the offensive coordinator, I definitely think he will have some ideas and some additional input that will add a layer of creativity. I also believe that Keith Carter's role as the offensive line coach will probably add a little bit of snarl to that group and to that room on a daily basis that they hope draws out kind of probably more of what Kevin O'Connell would call the play style element. So those are critical, but you're right to mention, the Aaron Jones conversation. Look, I think his cap number is around $14 million. The production has not come anywhere close to matching that cap number. So at the bare minimum, the Vikings would have been seeking a pretty major pay cut. Depending on his market, we'll see what happens in terms of how aggressive would other teams be. I know he loves it here. I know they respect him. And then I also know that the Vikings aren't going to want to spend crazily on the position, because they don't have a ton of room. So who might be available? It is this, but finding a running back, with a 3-down skill set is going to be massive. And if you're doing that via the draft and you're not doing that via the first round, you're really taking a long shot bet, which to do that for a run game you want to improve, that would be a pretty bold kind of scenario, in my opinion.
Yeah, and that's the, kind of the tough path forward. I've been bouncing it around, just kind of the idea, okay, so Kwesi moves on, and the rest, personnel, people and scouts and Brzezinski, the rest of these guys are here. So maybe there's a philosophical change in terms of draft boards and all of that. But just nuts and bolts of this thing, if they go with a defensive tackle, I was talking earlier last hour about Caleb Banks, the cat out of Florida. Okay, that makes sense. If they go with a safety, PA really hot. He's hot on this Dylan Thieneman, I think, out of Oregon, who just showed out at the freaking combine. It might not be there at 18. We'll see. But you start playing that game, relying on a rookie running back to complement a guy in Jordan Mason who's had trouble catching the ball over his course of his career. The combination of shedding money and then potentially relying on super young talent, we're threading another needle here, Alec, as it pertains to 2026. It's ridiculous.
Yeah, no, it's funny you said that, because that has become I don't know if that was even a company line of threading the needle, but it's kind of become the tagline of this off season, I think. But yeah, it's the other aspect you didn't mention, and it's not the sexiest radio, but running back pass protection is huge with how some of these defenses are calling games. And so, Jordan Mason has not been reliable in that phase. TJ Ham's retired, who was a huge 3rd down pass protecting back in the backfield.
Yep.
And with any quarterback that's playing for the Vikings, you're going to need that person to be reliable. So, it's like this. Who can you find at running back, if it's not Aaron Jones, who you would trust to have burst out of the backfield, who could catch passes, who you believe could pass protect straight out of the gate. I mean, there's just not a ton of those options available, and the really good ones who have been healthy in years past and have been reliable, they're going to cost money that the Vikings don't really have money to spend. So it's, I mean, you're looking at quarterback and running back, arguably two of the most important positions on your team. The question marks exist. So is it a Kenneth Gainwell type who could thread that needle? I mean, I'm sure that name, just like all the quarterback names, brings rash reactions on both sides, but that's the dynamic of where this team is.
Kenneth Gainwell. That's where we're at. Hey, we're again, threading needles is the story of this thing. Hey, when you were down there, Alec Lewis, The Athletic, with me 9 to noon, Nordo in for PA, vocal maintenance season. It's a Monday morning and there's sunshine outside, so we should all be happy. When you were in Indy last week, were there any prospects? And you probably didn't spend much time inside Lucas Oil watching any of this. Maybe you did, but was there anybody who was just like super steamy, just like I can't wait to watch that guy at the combine at any level, whether it was Vikings related or not? Just was there anybody that somebody was just like, wow, I can't wait to see this guy show out on the field?
That's a great question. In terms of me watching 40-yard dashes, I wouldn't know how to get into Lucas Oil Stadium.
Did you bring
my
a
editors
stopwatch
probably wouldn't want to
you?
hear, but it's part of it. I mean, I would say for me personally, like Jeremiah Love is my jam, and the guy, running back from Notre Dame, just explosive as heck. But I can't imagine he even gets to like number 8. That would be a guy. D'Angelo Pons, the tiny corner from Indiana, who he might be my favorite player to watch on tape in the draft. Had a really good week there, which was cool to see. I mean, you mentioned Caleb Banks from Florida is definitely, the guy's like 6'6", 330, and he looks made in a lab. Production and the availability haven't been there, but I would say just on the draft in general, when you talk to people in the league, the feeling is this isn't the most exceptional draft. There definitely is some talent at the top. And then it's kind of, you can find starters in the mid-tier. And that's really, with where I think this Vikings team is, that's got to be the focus here. It's just like, how many starters and young players can we pluck to add surplus elsewhere? That's going to be the critical component. And I also will say this, because you're talking about sunshine outside. Like, I think there definitely is a path with any of these quarterbacks that we've talked about, acquiring them in this system. I think there would be a path to 10, 11 wins. It's just the upside right now with that position limits where this team can go. I know I'm shifting the conversation a little bit, but I just want to say that.
No, that's all good, and it's prescient to this now. And I know you got to go to 11:30, so just one or two more for you here, specifically with the Vikings and the center spot. So, one thing that we haven't talked a ton about, you're anticipating there aren't like 30 or 40 different O-line combinations. Can we please just be healthy? But specific at the center spot, you got Ryan Kelly, and I just have to imagine that that's potentially one of those cuts, one of those cap casualties, and great career that he's had, but the head injuries and sadly just a lack of reliability proves into this. And then you have Juergens and you have Blake Brandel, who's kind of that swing tackle guard center, do it all. He had to last year. Like, what do you think about addressing that spot? Is that a free agency conversation plus a draft pick? Like, any thought given to that center spot yet?
Yeah, I would say there are a couple free agents who are intriguing to this team. But the money, again, and this is a theme of the conversation, like the money is going to matter, and the market for these guys may limit how far the Vikings would be willing to go. I would say there is faith in Blake Brandel, and that more time with that position, he could be serviceable. And if the offensive line around him is healthy, then then they could really produce. And then this draft, I would say, has a lot of centers that the Vikings like. So I wouldn't be shocked if there is a move forward scenario with Blake Brandel and Michael Juergens. And then if this team can snag one at some point in the draft, that might be the most likely scenario, at this moment.
Yeah, that's a tough thing. And this is all with all respect to Brandel. It feels like the trust in Brandel is because that's a guy that they have. Is there any element of necessity associated with moving forward? Because he's done good work in moments when he's been asked to play in a spot, but there's a reason that he's still a reserve. You know what I mean? And I'm looking at Logan Jones. I don't think he's definitely not a day one pick, but the Iowa cat for a center. I mean, man, you're Connor McGovern, Ethan Posich. I mean, some of these guys are going to be getting way too much cash that the Vikings won't even be in on. But it is a difficult spot. It's just Brandel does feel like in lieu of found money somewhere, we do have Brandel. You know what I mean?
No doubt. I mean, but I think and part of it is he's really smart. He works his butt off. So from a coaching staff standpoint, there is an amount of trust there that where it's like a fallback that it's like, it's a bad analogy, so bear with me. It's like that restaurant you can always go to and it's going to satisfy you in some way. I mean, that's just kind of what it is with Blake Brandel. I don't know why. Maybe I'm hungry. I'm bringing that up as the analogy, but yeah. And I mean, you mentioned Logan Jones, but like there are again in the draft there are a lot of centers. You're talking Sam Heck, Kansas State. You're talking Jake Slaughter, Florida, Connor Lew, Auburn. Like the fact I can rattle off a lot of these guys tells you that if the Vikings want to go that route and maybe you have Blake Brandel starting the season, maybe one of those guys develops quickly and you plug and play and they understand the system, that could be a route. I also think you're more inclined to go with a younger center or a less experienced center if you have a more veteran style quarterback.
Yeah, that's a terrific point. Hey, thanks for jumping on with me on a Monday, man. I know you got to fly, but have fun down in Alabama. It was good chatting with you. We'll catch up again soon, all right?
Absolutely. It'll be busy. You guys enjoy this week. Looking forward to seeing what happens. But yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it. And I will probably be texting you later this evening.
Absolutely. Cheers, man. That's Alec Lewis of The Athletic. And again, jump to The Athletic. He put out a piece. And, you know what, in terms of just what he heard at the combine and quarterback specifically related, he dropped part 1 today. Part 2 is going to be available tomorrow. But long time and one of our favorites, Alec Lewis of The Athletic, spent some time in Indy. Always good to spend some time with him 9 to noon. Now, we're going to pause, catch up on the clock. It's Nordo in for PA, Brett Blakemore producing. It's The Fan.
Man. The Fan welcomes some great shows to the Ledge Amphitheater this year. John Mulaney will be there August 22nd. Blues Traveler and Gin Blossoms will be there September 12th. Get complete details on all of our upcoming shows on the concert page, KFAN.com, keyword calendar.
Many text messages throughout the show today. Thank you. It's Nordo in for PA, vocal maintenance season. PA returns tomorrow. And, I might as well do a little rundown on that right now because we're going to start the show with head coach Chris Finch of the Minnesota Timberwolves, victorious in the Mile High City yesterday over the Nuggets, firmly in a top 4 spot right now. Well, firmly's tough because it is muddy and it's weird. And they could drop 2 straight and find their way back in 5th or 6th again. We know that. But they're also in lockstep right now and have a great opportunity. Let's continue. Let's make a new form of, instead of being inconsistent consistently, let's just be consistent and find our way into the 3rd spot before the postseason. But PA is going to be back. We're going to chat with the head coach. And then Kevin Gorg, not just on the Minnesota Wild, but high school hockey tournament. He's going to join around 9:30. Ben Gessling, Star Tribune. He's going to be in studio at 10. And then Tony Scott, Youth Hockey Hub. And more, he's going to be in studio chatting about the boys' high school state tournament that's going to lift off on Wednesday. So a full show, post-vocal maintenance tomorrow. But text messages in 64686. Bradshaw and Bryant, KFAN text line. Anybody is able to text, but I noticed that there was a particular topic. Now, there's a gentleman by the name of Paul that has effectively spammed the entire text line. We can just run through them here, and you're all free to do it. This is a block-free environment, at least 9 to noon, I can tell you. Good, bad, and ugly, ain't going to block you. Let's see from Paul.
Speak for yourself.
From Paul here. If your offensive line sucks, it doesn't matter who your QB is. Okay, and that was at 11:14. 30 seconds later, he does not believe that his point had been made, so he texted again, if your offensive line sucks, it doesn't matter if your wide receiver is a superstar. Okay, perfect. All right, moving on. Paul again. 7 minutes later. If your offensive line sucks, you cannot run the ball no matter who your running back is. All right, check that box. Let me see here. Paul again, just to make a final point, so I thought. Fix the offensive line, and the quarterback and running back will fix themselves. Okay, well, then 30 seconds later. Why is Alec Lewis not talking about the offensive line? Did he not watch how last season's games played out? And then another serviceable is not good enough. So, I got the point, Paul. And I appreciate it. So we've spent, in fairness to Paul's point, we do spend a lot of time, and that's how I framed it up last week. We had Charch on talking about the draft, talking about the combine. Pick 18, they're by nature of being the first one, by nature of being in said first round with the highest likelihood of getting a super talented player that can help the team quickly. That has been the focus of 9 to noon. A couple shows last week at the Combine in Indianapolis. PA and Pete speaking with the luminaries, a little steamrolling, focused on pick 18. Well, what does pick 18 entail? Well, it may have entailed tight end Kenyon Sadiq until he freaking went total alien on it and looked like the greatest tight end in the history of combines ever to combine. Kenyon Sadiq, wow. And maybe he's not available anymore at pick 18. We shall see. But specifically defensive tackle, specifically safety. And we do this a lot. Well, we need the best player available. But then we immediately look at the depth chart and say, well, if we're getting rid of a gentleman by the name of Javon Hargrave, we're going to need a fat guy in the middle. And maybe that's Caleb Banks out of Florida. Wouldn't mind having him here. Looks pretty damn good, in fact. Or at the safety spot, Hitman retired. Well, we need the best player available. Oh, but Hitman's retiring. And he had a shoulder thing with Metellus a year ago. And Theo Jackson was playing a lot. Might need safety. So, that Thieneman cat. I hope I'm pronouncing his name correctly. The safety out of Oregon. Speaking of showing out, by the way, I'd seen bits with Thieneman going somewhere in the second round. Will he be available at 18? Talking a lot about Oregon Ducks, by the way. Too much Oregon. And our favorite cat, Coy Parrish, now plays for Oregon. And maybe he's the next best Dylan Thieneman, and a guy we're talking about a year or two from now going to the purple. Who knows? Hopefully not at pick 18. Hopefully much later in the draft. But to that end, all that focus on defensive tackle, all that focus on safety, I must concede, listener Paul and a few others. I only read Paul's because he texted about 8 times in what felt like 20 minutes. But we have not chatted about the center spot, maybe as urgently as we possibly could. And it is an issue. 2 years ago, 48 sacks for Sam Darnold during the regular season. In total, 57, including the playoff game. A year later, Vikings quarterbacks combined, felt like there was 10 of them that played. There wasn't. 60 sacks endured, courtesy of the Minnesota Moving Company. And as we talked about during the middle hour with Pete Najarian, you can play the game of sack by sack by sack by sack by sack till you get to 60. Which one did the quarterback hold on to the ball too long? There was a point in time, by the way, there were plenty in terms of the sacks that J.J. McCarthy endured, where as soon as he hit his drop, the top of his drop, somebody was on him. That happened many times, specifically early on in the season when Justin School was playing in substitution of Christian Darrisaw. He just had no time. We kind of talked our way out of that being a potential issue. It's Justin School's fault. We'll get Darrisaw back. Everything's going to be fine. And then McCarthy hurts his ankle. We don't see him for 6 weeks. But there is an element where one can help the other. And McCarthy should not be absolved of anything in relation to holding the ball too long, lack of decision-making, walking his way into sacks, all of those things. But 60 is a glaring number. A year after 57 on Sam Darnold, and the center spot with the number of combinations that took place, whether it's injury, proficiency, all of those things that this team endured in a 9-win season last year, you can't move forward into April, can't move forward into free agency without talking about the center position. And it's similar to the quarterback. Well, it's different than the quarterback spot because there are talent. There are talented individuals that will be available in the middle of March. But it's similar to the quarterback spot in terms of the money that you want to spend, the output, and how you're going to find your way to the right answer there. There's a Lloyd Cushenberry out of Tennessee. Now, I know there's somebody via the text line that's going to tell us that they've watched all of Tennessee's games. I will concede. I'm not really sure how good Lloyd Cushenberry is, but he's 28. I think he got about $12 million this last year. He's going to be somewhere between 7 to 10 per. Connor McGovern, I mentioned him with Alec last segment. Buffalo center. Feels like they would try to make a move to keep him if they could. Ethan Posich. Up and down career, but he found some stability with Cleveland. He's with the Browns. Then there's a high-ender Tyler Linderbaum for the Baltimore Ravens. I think he is ending his rookie contract. I believe the Ravens would be apt to want to keep him. Ooh, Austin Schlopeman's available. Remember him? Played for the Minnesota Vikings. Probably not an option. But I mentioned Logan Jones. This Minnesota moving company can be better in 2026 simply by just staying on the freaking field and bringing Christian Darrisaw back from injury, working his way in slowly. Will he play? Will he not play? Is there additional injury to the knee? Think about how that game played out over the course of 2025, how exhausting it was. Will Fries, who had to work his way, I think his competency level and his production level did slowly get better over the course of 2025. He was the only consistency that you had the entire season. Even Donovan Jackson appreciated. I thought he was a little bit better early than he was later in the season. He needs to be much better into his sophomore campaign. Brian O'Neill, little nicks, little injuries here, there, little stuff. He battles through it. He's an Iron Man at this stage of his career. What are we getting out of him? Simply by nature of just staying healthy, this will be a better operation in 2026. I just don't know how you move forward with Ryan Kelly. I don't know how that is even a possibility in 2026. And so I could be proven wrong. I'm happy to face that when it occurs. I just don't see him in the mix. And so it is Michael Juergens, who is definitely not like Cam Juergens in Philly. There is Blake Brandel, who can play every spot on the O-line, it appears, but hasn't busted through into a prominent starting role. There's a reason behind that. And then there's the draft. And I mentioned that Logan Jones cat out of Iowa. I really like him, and he would be somebody that I would focus on in the draft. I'm not in the rooms. Brzezinski doesn't ask me. Just somebody I'm looking at. And then there's one of those free agents. That is, to Paul's point, and anyone else listening 9 to noon, what we do at the center spot means a freaking ton in 2026 and should not be forgotten as we talk about the upcoming draft and what's ahead for our favorite football team. Final segment is next.
And
quick little covenant cleanup. And you smile at me, Blake. I was about to call
That's
you.
Fair.
We've talked about the O-line. I was about to call you Blake Brandel. Brett Blakemore, you're smiling at me as I say there's a covenant cleanup because you want to play it. And so you just might as well. Just do it.
it's a covenant cleanup. We say stupid things all of the time. It's a covenant cleanup according to you. An unforgivable crime. Covenant cleanup. Sponsored by nobody.
I have that on almost every page on the PA shift.
Just in case.
Just in case that it may come up.
Yeah, and I was talking with somebody in sales last week. We could spend an entire segment every single day going through the mistakes that we make on a daily basis. But I saw a couple of text messages about this early on in the show. I did the weekend wrap. The weekend wrap on Monday morning, spend the segment, just what happened over the weekend. Here's what happened. And just quick little pontifications as we move on. An egregious error was committed because I did not talk about the 19th ranked Gopher women's hoops team. You know, Nico Medved's squad, they're scrambling just to get to 500. Motzko's team, I mentioned them. They need to win the Big Ten tournament to sniff the national tourney. Meanwhile, Gopher women, they just hooked and they beat Illinois. I believe that was in Champaign. And it was close, but 78-73. And they are a ranked national force that will be in the NCAA women's tourney. And I believe the Big Ten tournament starts later this week. I think, let me see here. I believe it's Friday. Yes, there we go. It's in Indy starting on Friday. I did not mention them as part of the weekend wrap. And so that is indeed, as I said to the sales guys we could do a segment every single day just devoted to covenant cleanups, the things we do and say incorrectly. It's an option. It's an option that's out there. So cheers to the Gopher ladies that are absolutely showing out and representing college hoops at a high level. So congratulations to them. That does wrap up the 9 to noon show today. Nordo in for PA. Thanks to Brett. Thank you so much, whether it was Pete Najarian, Alec Lewis, and Pat Micheletti during the opening hour for joining me. Tomorrow, again, it's going to be Coach Chris Finch, Minnesota Timberwolves, leading off the show. Kevin Gorg in the first hour. Ben Gessling in studio at 10. Tony Scott on the high school hockey tourney at 11. Full show, full strength. That's mañana. Thank you for listening to The Fan when you do. The program is next. Have an awesome afternoon.
Podcast today's Paul Allen Show, or listen back to previous show and interviews by going to the iHeartRadio app or KFAN.com.